Hey everyone, I'm Mariana, this is Impression Blend, and it is finally time for me to talk about my top 10 movies of 2024. It was a pretty weird movie year for me, so many disappointments as far as films I was looking forward to, but also just as many surprises. A great year for horror, which you will definitely see reflected here. If you missed my other favorites, I already talked about my favorite TV series as well as my favorite underrated movies of the year, and I will link those videos in the info box below, but let's get into my top 10 favorite movies of 2024. Speaking of horror, kicking off this list at number 10 is Heretic, one of the biggest surprises of the year for me. I expected this movie to be pretty average, but I was so entertained and I sat there locked in from beginning to end. This movie blends psychological thriller and religious horror, and it's not your typical religious horror either, and what you end up watching is a very twisted game of cat and mouse. Two young Mormon missionaries knock on the wrong door, and the seemingly charming but actually sinister Mr. Reed traps them in his house, looking to put their faith to the test. I loved how refreshing and unpredictable this movie was, how it actually got into an interesting discussion of religion, bringing up ideas of the nature of belief, choice, and control, and how it didn't preach any kind of lesson, instead letting the audience come to their own conclusions. The conversation around this movie was fascinating. Heretic is also tightly paced, atmospheric, full of dark humor, and it knows how to crank up the tension through small details and dialogue, eventually escalating into full-on horror territory. Hugh Grant is not only as great as you would expect, but the way he weaponizes his charm, turning it into something that feels threatening and straight up diabolical, made this into one of my favorite performances of the entire year. I do have a separate review of this film, so check that out if you haven't. I have reviews for most of the movies on this list, so after you're done watching this video, take a look at my channel, see what you missed. Sticking with horror, for number 9, we are onto some serious nightmare fuel with Alien Romulus. This one seemed to be a bit hit or miss for people, but as an Alien fan, I had an amazing time. I haven't had this much fun with this franchise in a while. Fede Alvarez promised to take the franchise back to its roots, and he delivered. The movie is an intense and thrilling sci-fi horror experience where a group of young people, desperate to get to a different planet, decide to go scavenging what they think is a decommissioned spaceship, only to come face to face with the most terrifying life form in the universe. It's not a perfect movie. There are a few too many references in it. There is some disappointing CGI that wasn't even necessary, especially since it really sticks out next to how beautifully practical the vast majority of the film is. But this is something I can pretty easily look past because the movie is an adrenaline ride that's easily one of the best entries in the franchise. Beautiful cinematography, a perfectly fitting score, the creatures are terrifying, and the action is gripping. You can't tell me that zero gravity scene wasn't fun to watch. When it revisits familiar territory, it puts a new spin on things, but it also has some very intriguing ideas to add to the Alien universe. And look, I just love effective sci-fi horror that can put me at the edge of my seat and get a little weird along the way, which Alien Romulus certainly did. At number 8, I have Anora, a movie that took a second viewing for me to fully appreciate. I'm not going to lie, I was really thrown off by the first act the first time around, but the rest of the film really won me over, and watching it the second time bumped it right up into my favorites. This movie is crazy, and I mean it as a compliment. Anora, a young sex worker from Brooklyn, meets and impulsively marries Ivan, the son of a Russian oligarch. But what might seem like a modern-day Cinderella story quickly turns into uncut gems levels of chaos when Ivan's parents hear about the marriage and are determined to get it annulled. The movie is absolutely electric, and its insane energy is impossible to resist. Do I think Ivan is the most punchable character I've seen in years? Yes. Do I still think dedicating the entire first act to partying was too much? Also, yes, but knowing what to expect the second time around made the movie really come together for me, and it's actually crazy how quickly the 2 hour and 20-minute runtime flies by. I laughed, I cried, I was frustrated, I wanted to strangle some characters. I love how funny it is, I love how down to earth it is, I love the romantic streak in it, I love the colorful characters and all of the visual storytelling that supports the sharp dialogue, and Mikey Madison, who is the movie, who lights up the screen just by existing on it. The entire cast is amazing, but she is everything. For number 7, I am back with even more nightmare fuel because it's time we talked about The Substance. Easily one of the movies that defined 2024 and managed to combine an unforgettable visual style, body horror, and ideas that resonated with so many people. French director and screenwriter Coralie Farjat tells the story of a fading celebrity who decides to use a black market substance to bring forward a younger, supposedly better version of herself. I mean, is there anything left to say about this movie at this point? It's shocking, it's crazy, it's disgusting, it's darkly funny, it's grotesque. Good luck watching it if you don't like needles or messy close-ups of people eating. This movie is absolutely unhinged and entirely unsubtle, which really is part of its charm and what makes it as entertaining as it is. It's simply one of the best horror movies of 2024, even if I felt like some of it was way over the top, but that's just my personal preference. I still obviously thought it was great and it really stuck with me. I loved the way it confronted beauty standards, the importance of self-worth, how unkind we can be to ourselves, and how relying on external validation can warp the way we see ourselves. There's so much to discuss with this film, but as I said in my review, if there ever was a cautionary tale for going too far in pursuit of what you want, this is it. Also, Academy, don't fuck this up. Give Demi Moore her Oscar. Next up, I have another horror movie, one that I think is actually pretty underrated, and I did talk about it in my underrated horror movies of 2024 video. At number 6, I have Oddity, which I would describe as a comfort horror movie. For me, it feels like old school supernatural horror done right. It feels like Edgar Allan Poe meets Mike Flanagan, and it's very beautifully made and very atmospheric. All things I love to see. The story is about Darcy, a self-proclaimed psychic and collector of cursed items, who decides to go after those responsible for the murder of her twin sister by using some haunted items. This movie has a very timeless feel to it, even though it's set in modern day, and if it wasn't for the brief use of technology, this could have easily been set in the past. There's also a really great blend of genres going on, with it being a bit of a murder mystery and having asylum and folk horror elements on top of it being supernatural horror, and that makes for a really interesting story that I was completely immersed in. It also looks absolutely gorgeous, with the cinematography really working its magic to build the tension and revealing things in the most effective and satisfying ways, while also keeping it creepy and unsettling. Plus, Carolyn Bracken, the lead actress in a dual role playing both of the twins, really sells it. She's amazing. Oddity is very much my kind of horror film, especially considering how many different ways it finds to scare its audience and how perfect the ending is. Getting into my top 5 now, and let's talk about the movie that made me cry this year. At number 5, I have A Real Pain. Wow, did this hit me like a ton of bricks. A movie that's about dealing with generational trauma, processing grief, and navigating complicated family dynamics. Two cousins, David and Benji, who couldn't be more different from each other, reunite for a tour through Poland to honor their grandmother. As the two of them begin exploring their family history, old tensions between them come up again, making the trip more complicated than they expected. This is an incredibly vulnerable film, one that isn't afraid to get personal and uncomfortable, which is what makes it so beautiful. Easily some of the best writing of the year that effortlessly switches between being hilarious one minute and utterly heartbreaking the next. Some really meaningful and impactful quiet moments as well. A real pain really got to me, and a lot of it has to do with self-discovery and fully embracing who you are and how that affects the people around you. And the performances, of course. Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin are both fantastic, but there is a reason why Culkin is getting so much praise. He is absolutely at the top of his game here. His performance is raw, honest, and simply brilliant. I don't think it's possible to walk away from this movie without feeling all kinds of emotions, and he's a big part of that. Now, if I were to pick the most rewatchable film of 2024, my number 4 pick would be the one, and that is Challengers. Guys, this was the most fun I had watching a movie this year. Loved it even more on a rewatch, and I'm really mad at myself for not watching it in theaters. What was I thinking? Here's the thing. On paper, this doesn't sound like the most exciting film. It's a romantic sports drama about 3 tennis players and about how their lives, rivalry, and love triangle unfold through the years. But it's a Luca Guadagnino film starring Zendaya, Mike Feist, and Josh O'Connor. It's entertaining, it's creative, it's dramatic, it's sexy, it uses non-linear storytelling exceptionally well, and it has so much fun with the visuals. There is no reason why Challengers shouldn't be a frontrunner for all kinds of awards, including cinematography and editing. It's a thoroughly engaging and captivating experience that is just so satisfying to watch. It is such an exciting movie, and one that only gets better with repeat viewings. I also love what it has to say about desire and ambition and how those two things intersect. And who would have thought that all of that can be conveyed through tennis? It's a fantastic film with excellent performances, engrossing drama, another great Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross score that will make you want to get up and dance, and genuinely exciting filmmaking that we really need more of. We made it to my top 3, and I am taking a leap from fun to about as disturbing as it gets, because at number 3, I have Red Rooms. This was actually my first review of 2024 because the release was all over the place, and it really stuck with me all the way since January, because once you see this movie, you will never forget it. The thing about Red Rooms is that it's endlessly disturbing while also avoiding being exploitative or showing any kind of gratuitous violence. The movie follows a fashion model, Kellyanne, who is obsessed with a high-profile, horrendous murder trial, but we slowly start to realize that she might also be obsessed with the actual killer. It's a haunting story revolving around the dark web, morbid fantasies, and going down a very dark path to find the final piece of the puzzle. It's so impressive how effective this serial killer procedural thriller is, and how much the writer-director Pascal Plante is able to achieve without showing the gruesome details. He tells you what happened in chilling detail. He shows you the reactions of those who are watching. He guides you with the sound design and score and lets your brain do the rest. The film also questions our current obsession with true crime and isn't afraid to look at the darkest corners of humanity. Red Rooms was definitely a shock to the system for me, and it's a film that I haven't been able to shake off for over a year now. It's dark, twisted, thought-provoking, and beyond unsettling, but also exceptional and brilliantly made. All right, if you've been around my channel for a while, you know I don't give out 10 out of 10 ratings very often, and this year only 2 movies got the perfect score from me. And I did have to think about which one ends up on top because as different as they are, I did adore both of them. But a rewatch identified a clear winner, so the runner-up to my favorite film of 2024 is Nosferatu, the beautifully dark gothic horror I instantly fell in love with. Robert Eggers brought a vampire classic back to the big screen in all of its creepy, moody, and ominous glory, reimagining the 1922 iconic German silent film, which in itself was an unofficial adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's the famous tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and an ancient vampire, and I think we all know the rest. Every second of this film is stunning. Every frame looks like you're stepping into someone's darkly gorgeous nightmare. The sets, the costumes, the lighting, the cinematography, the endlessly haunting atmosphere. This film transported me into a different world. Fantastic performances across the board as well, with a menacingly decaying and unrecognizable Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok. And yes, Dracula's original description includes a mustache, so everyone needs to relax. But Lily Rose Depp completely steals the show with her unforgettable, desperate performance as Ellen, easily one of the best performances of the year. This was everything I was hoping for from a Nosferatu film and more. Easily one of the best vampire movies ever made and one of the most striking examples of cinematic gothic horror. But of course that means that my favorite movie of the year is Dune Part 2. I mean, there really was no other answer to this for me. It's the movie of the year, it's a future classic, and I love it more and more every time I watch it. I don't really know what I can tell you about how amazing this film is that hasn't already been said, and I already sung its praises back when I reviewed it. I also don't think I need to tell you anything about the story. It's one of the most watched films of 2024, one of the most beloved films of the year, and at this point, we all know who Paul Atreides is and how this story subverts the hero's journey. What I will say is that I am continuously intrigued by Denis Villeneuve's choice to approach this adaptation of Dune, leaning heavily into the influence of the Bene Gesserit and showing how behind-the-scenes scheming shapes so many lives. It's a gorgeously made, breathtaking film that impressed me in every way possible and made me emotional about things I didn't think I could be emotional about. It's a monumental cinematic achievement that transcends the sci-fi genre, but I love that Villeneuve stays true to himself and continues exploring humanity and human nature even when he's making an epic sci-fi blockbuster. He has been my favorite director for a long time now, and with his Dune films, he once again proves that he is a master of his craft. Endlessly in love with this film despite the changes to the source material, and I cannot wait to see what Villeneuve does with Dune Messiah. But if you want to see how I rank the rest of the movies I watched this year, I will, as always, have a link to a full ranking on my Letterboxd in the info box below. Don't forget to let me know what your favorite movies of 2024 are and what movies are you looking forward to the most in 2025. And for more of my 2024 favorites, check out one of these videos next.